Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the show. We got 6 games to tell you about today. We're going out to Germany. We're not actually going there, but we're previewing that game. Seattle and Tampa Bay. Philadelphia, Washington, a rematch. Detroit at Chicago. Dallas at Green Bay. Arizona at the Rams. Going to get a starting quarterback in that game. Houston at the Giants. And, of course, we'll recap the thrilling game from last night. Carolina 22, Atlanta 15. First, though, happy Veterans Day. Shout out to the veterans. We love you. We appreciate you. Everything you've done. Thank you for your service. And you deserve more than one day. But today is your day. Happy Veterans Day. And happy Friday, Dave and Jamie. What's up, guys?
What's up, Adam? Special
Happy
shout
Friday,
out
buddy.
to brand new Marine Tyler Woods, who's hanging out. I think he's in North Carolina right now. He's a friend of the family.
Oh.
And certainly remembering past veterans in my family, including my grandfather, Jerome Richard, who served in World War II.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
About that. Cool, man. Oh, Jamie, you good? Feeling good?
Yeah, man. You good?
I'm good. Yeah. What a game. Carolina 22, Atlanta 15.
You stay awake?
You know, I was very tired yesterday, but I did stay awake. I do FFT and 5 right after the game with Chris. He was really mad about Kyle Pitts.
Man,
he goes.
So is everybody.
Pitts. He goes to bat for Pitts every week, and it's like Pitts could be having these big games, and Mariota just can't find him. And Arthur Smith didn't exactly say no to Desmond Ridder starting next week. He just deflected on the question. He did not say Marcus Mariota is starting next week, so we'll keep an eye on that. But all right, before we get to that, who would you guys rather have rest of season? Deontay Foreman. Another huge game for him. Now 3 100-yard games. He had 31 carries, 130 yards, and a touchdown after a terrible game last week. Deontay Foreman or Cordero Patterson?
I would go with Foreman. The Falcons seem pretty content with splitting up the touches, and it's rather frustrating. So I think Foreman, while he will lose some to potentially both Blackshear and Hubbard, he's their guy. So as long as he's their guy, he's going to get more touches than Patterson.
I agree. The only case you can make for Patterson is that the schedule moving up for him is pretty good. He's got the Bears next week, Commanders after that, Arizona in week 17, fantasy championships on the line. I would expect that they do try and thin out what they've got at running back in Atlanta. But until that happens, I don't think you can expect 15 touches from Cordero Patterson. So the Panthers are riding with Foreman. I agree.
Not really that great of a schedule, though, either. I mean,
true.
Sorry to nitpick here, but there's also a bye in there. There's Baltimore.
They both do. They both have a bye.
They both have a bye. Okay. All right. Yeah. So that was encouraging for Foreman. I guess follow up on this is just based on last week going so poorly. It was 35-0, but they're not a good team, right? They're a 3-win team. You try to sell Deontay Foreman or better. How much faith do you have in him? How much confidence do you have in him? Is he a must-start? Has he entered must-start territory? Deontay Foreman. Dave, you can start.
I'll say that he has entered must-start territory because how many running backs are out there who have a shot at getting 15 touches per game, even when it's a competitive game, or maybe even when they're down 10 points, something like that in the second half. I still think Foreman's going to get some work. I think they like what he gives them. Obviously, they do. It's when they get their doors blown off, which is what happened against Cincinnati, where they go, well, can't run the ball anymore. We're down 5 touchdowns. It's halftime. That's when you know that Deontay Foreman's not going to be any good. How many matchups do they have left where that's definitely going to be the case? I'll just look at their next 3. At Baltimore, it's going to be really tough, but I don't think they're going to get their doors blown off by halftime. Denver, after that, I don't think they're going to get their doors blown off. Then a bye, and then at Seattle, that's probably going to be like the Pete Carroll ideal football game in the history of Pete Carroll ideal football games, because both teams will run it a ton. I'm good with Foreman. If you can sell real high on him, sure, but you'll do that with anybody.
I just realized I sent a group text this morning to Dave, Jamie, and our producer, Zach, and I put my brother Dave on it and not Dave Richards. So,
Yeah.
Oops. All right, Jamie, for the pass catchers in this game, Drake London, 5 catches, 38 yards, and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts, 2 catches for 28 yards. He now has 6 games with fewer than 5 PPR fantasy points. However, We are seeing 2 games in a row, missed opportunities, getting open, having chances. So we've got Pitts. We've got DJ Moore, who had a bad game. We've got Drake London. Do you trust any pass catcher on either team?
No. Moore will still be somebody that you should consider using in 3 receiver leagues, but it's, the 2-game sample size is not enough at this point, I think, to say he's solved after what we saw in the first 2 starts with PJ Walker. I mean, in the games where they're probably chasing points, so next week against Baltimore, yes, they'll probably be chasing points. You feel a little bit better about him, but 2 receiver leagues, there's no way you can comfortably start DJ Moore at this point. London, great that he scored. Congratulations for him. And Kyle Pitts, it just depends on what your tight end situation is at this point. But again, similar situation. If you're winning in spite of him, I would look for an upgrade for the fantasy playoffs. If you're losing with his poor play, you've been making a mistake by clearly starting him all this time.
Okay. Anything else on this game, guys? I miss anything?
No.
I don't think so. Okay. Terrace Marshall had a 43-yard catch. That was cool.
That led the Panthers in receiving. Don't forget about Laviska Shenault's touchdown run.
Yeah.
I guess the one thing, if you want to look for some semblance of hope for DJ Moore, is that to sort of piggyback on what Dave was talking about with Foreman, if they are chasing points not in terrible weather, maybe that helps.
And Mariota, by the way, has scored 17 or more fantasy points in 7 of 10 games. And he's had 3 really bad games, and he scored 20 or more fantasy points the following week, all 3 times. So, he had a 3.9 point game. He scored 20. He had a 7.6 point game. He scored 20 the next week. Maybe I'm missing one, but anyway, he's actually been pretty solid, but he may not be the starting quarterback next week. There's a chance it doesn't happen. All right. Anyway, we're
going to find out if Desmond Ritter's ready, because if they don't go to him now, that's the signal of the Falcons telling us that he's not ready to play.
We got a lot of great content for you this weekend. Great ways to get your fantasy lineup set and win some leagues, win some weeks. You can ask us on Twitter some questions with the hashtag AskFFT. Watch out for some Twitter threads. I'm at Adam Azer, A-I-Z-E-R. Dave is at Dave Richard. Jamie is at Jamie Eisenberg, J-A-M-E-Y. At Heath Cummings, S-R. At C Towers, CBS. That's all I'm going to give out right now. You can follow us all on Twitter.
Why do you hate Frank?
At Roto Frank. It might be there might be an underscore in there. But
I believe there is.
Roto.
Why do you hate Jacob Gibbs?
At J.A. Gibbs 23. And
did you mention
why do you hate
Dan Schneier NFL?
What about our amazing editor, RJ White?
I don't know his Twitter handle. Anyway,
you don't even know our manager's Twitter handle?
Do you?
He's not his manager, so he doesn't have to know.
It's true. He's not my manager.
I know it.
All right.
Google. RJ White 1.
Okay, let me get through this here. We've got a mailbag for you. You know that. We've got HQ Sunday morning at 9 a.m. this week, I assume?
9 a.m. this week. Munich time.
Yeah. 9 a.m. Eastern. Check it out. CBS Sports HQ on the CBS Sports app. You can watch it on your smart TV, your Roku, whatever. And we've got a YouTube live stream, youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. You can watch all of our shows on YouTube, by the way, all of our podcasts. youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. We'll see you at 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday morning. See you there. Okay, one of the big storylines for this week's games is what to do if the starting quarterback doesn't play. So when you look at Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, and Matthew Stafford, and it seems like just based on practicing, Kyler Murray has the best chance to play right now because Allen and Stafford are not practicing. Let's talk about Diggs, Hopkins, and Kupp, 3 of the best wide receivers in fantasy football. If their quarterbacks do not play, where would you rank Diggs, Hopkins, and Kupp, Dave?
They will all remain top 15 fantasy receivers in full PPR because I think they will all still get a lot of targets. They just won't be the same types of targets. Certainly not as many targets of 16 plus air yards, something like that. I said on HQ yesterday to Jamie, you remember that game that Cooper Kupp had where he had 19 targets and 14 catches and didn't even average 10 yards per catch? That's what I think you'll get out of Cooper Kupp this week, which is still amazing in PPR. And of course, you'll take that in non-PPR. I think you'll see lesser versions of that from Diggs and Hopkins, at least in the case of Diggs. He's playing with a quarterback that he's familiar with. The quarterback knows what he can do. They've hooked up for some touchdowns along the way. I think you could be fairly encouraged by Diggs. I just wouldn't expect 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think you can feel okay about Hopkins. I wouldn't expect 9 catches for 120 yards. You're still going to start them. They're still going to be good. They won't be great.
The guy I look at in your rankings, maybe you're a little lower on him, but Jamie has Christian Kirk 12th. You have him 16th. Heath has him 13th. And I wonder, would you drop any of those 3 guys with a backup quarterback, Kupp, Diggs, Hopkins, behind Christian Kirk?
Hopkins, if there's no Kyler. The other 2, no.
I'd consider it with Hopkins, and in non-PPR, I'd consider it with all 3.
Okay. Okay. Like Juju or those guys?
Man, Juju's been
I would
on
start
a roll.
Juju over Hopkins in PPR.
If Kyler are out.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So when we go through these games, and I don't want to really like rehash this. So just that's your, and the other guy, like the Gabe Davises, the Rondale Moore, I guess would be kind of interesting. I don't think we're starting Allen Robinson, but Gabe Davis, Rondale Moore, significant drop in the rank.
I don't know how much it's Kyler's playing.
Okay. Okay, then. So Gabe Davis, then I know we did this yesterday, but just to put a bow on it, because Josh Allen once again did not practice, and we didn't know that when we recorded yesterday. Where will Gabe Davis be if Allen's out?
Low
183rd.
low end number 3 receiver.
All right. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break.
The matchup's fantastic. I mean, they're beat up in their secondary, so hopefully Case Keenum can get him going if you're stuck.
Could he have an Orchard Park miracle to Gabe Davis? It's possible, but that's like you're starting him with low expectations if you're starting him at all.
Okay, so we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll go through the injuries. We'll go through the beat the waiver wire players for you. We will go through one question for each game, and we'll get into it. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. Your news and notes. So just to recap, Josh Allen missed practice. Matthew Stafford missed practice. Kyler Murray did practice on Thursday. Ryan Tannehill also practiced in full. So we are expecting Ryan Tannehill to play against Denver. Don't start.
So all the quarterbacks, all the stud quarterbacks,
back.
Good injury updates.
Running back news. Jonathan Taylor practiced in full. You guys expect him to go, right?
Yes.
No, practicing in full is a terrible sign.
Yeah. Just double checking. And the Raiders linebacking core, talking about this on FFT and 5. Divine Diablo is on IR. Blake Martinez played 90% of the snap, 90+% of the snaps last week. He retired this week. That's kind of just funny to say. I hope everything's okay with him. I'm not sure why he retired.
Can you imagine being a Raiders beat writer yesterday and just the news you got hit with?
Oh, I know. We'll get to that in a second. And Denzel Perryman's beat up, but it looks like he's probably going to play. So it's a great matchup for Taylor. Ezekiel Elliott is questionable. We're going to preview that game pretty soon. We're not sure if he's going to play. Aaron Jones was limited. Same game. We don't know what the running back situation is going to be in Dallas, Green Bay, but Jones has been practicing each of the last 2 days in a limited fashion. Derrick Henry has not been practicing. Are we concerned about this?
He's the same thing the last couple of weeks, so I would say no, but obviously if he does not practice Friday, he should be a little bit alarmed, but it sounds like it's just been more rest. At this point, they just have to put him in bubble wrap until game day.
They didn't list an actual injury on the injury report. They just said resting player.
Okay. J.D. McKissick missed practice. Kyren Williams could play this week. He's 35% rostered. Wide receiver news. You know that Kenny Golladay and Treylon Burks look, well, we don't know about Burks, but they look like they're coming back this week. Brandon Cooks practice, so he's going to play. Nico Collins was limited. They might have their full arsenal against the Giants for Houston. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams missed practice. We're not expecting them. Jahan Dotson practiced. Mecole Hardman has missed practice now 2 days in a row with an abdomen injury. Jamie, if Mecole Hardman does not play, what does that mean for the rest of the wide receivers for Kansas City?
It means that there's opportunity for either MVS or potentially Kadarius Toney because he kind of fits that mold a little bit more so than MVS does. And so this would be the time to see what he can offer to this offense more so than just, the handful of plays that he had in week 9. But you can't start anybody with any semblance of confidence. It's more, oh my gosh, my team is in dire need of someone, and I picked up Kadarius Toney. Let me see what happens if there is no Hardman. But Friday's practice will kind of tell you where they're at.
And Dave, if we look at tight end news, David Njoku missed practice, but let's go tight end / wide receiver here and talk about the Raiders. So Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow are on IR. And when you step back and look at it, they've gotten nothing from Waller lately, obviously, and they've gotten very little from Renfrow. So, people asking about Morrow and Mac Hollins. And do you recommend adding those guys?
Bye-week replacement types. And in the case of Hollins, you can stash them and see what develops. In the last 3 games, there hasn't been any Waller for those games. Do you know who's second on the Raiders in target share?
Target share? Well, targets.
It could be targets too, obviously.
It's Morrow.
It is.
Yeah.
So I can't help but suggest him as like a bye-week tight end. And, people have been getting by with a different tight end for Waller for a while now. So this isn't some sort of shock. It just sucks that he's not going to be good to go. If you're in I don't know how deep the league has to be. I'm in a 14-team league. I'm not picking him up, but Keelan Cole is probably going to replace Hunter Renfrow in the slot. So he'll get those 5 fantasy points that Hunter Renfrow.
Well, they indicated that Adams is going to play more in the slot.
Okay, so then Cole could play on the outside. It shapes up for Adams to be 10 targets a game.
So Mac Hollins played 2 games already this season without Hunter Renfrow. One was against Tennessee, one was against Denver. So very wide range of spectrum of matchup. Mm-hmm. Against the Titans, week 3, he had 11 targets, 8 catches, 158 yards, and a touchdown. Against the Broncos, which we know they lock down outside receivers, 3 catches, 33 yards, and 5 targets. So 16 targets over 2 games, 11 catches, 180 plus yards, and a touchdown. So take that for what it's worth. This is not the easiest of matchups, but if you look at who the Colts have played, they haven't exactly played world beaters from a passing game standpoint. I think Hollins is 100% worth picking up. I think it's worth looking at him as a number 3 receiver this week if you're stuck. And he may come out of this as the biggest winner because I think just in terms of upside, if he's now the number 1 outside guy, if Adams is now in the slot, Derek Carr's still going to look for him, and hopefully we're looking at maybe 6 to 7 targets per game.
This matchup this week is not good against the Colts. I don't think there's been a single number 2 wide receiver that's had a good game against the Colts. I mean, I'm looking.
But if you go back and look who they've played, I'm in agreement with you. It's not a good matchup. You shouldn't be starting him. But they played Jacksonville twice, and Kirk had 1 good game, 1 bad game. Mm-hmm. They played the Texans twice already, or just once?
They've played the Texans once. They've played the Titans twice.
Yes. Oh, the Titans twice. So there's that passing game. So it's not like they faced a lot of great passing options right now.
The best number 2 receivers they faced were Jerry Jeudy, 53 yards, and Curtis Samuel, 50 yards. And those guys are slot guys. Hollins isn't. But for what it's worth, I don't think there's been a number 2 receiver that's had more than 53 yards against the Colts this year.
And his schedule not easy. After this, they get Denver, then they get Seattle, then the Chargers. So it's not like he's going to have favorable matchups the rest of the way. But still, it's worth your interest if you've been cycling through some of these guys. Like I put them in the same range at this point. Darius Slayton, Donovan Peoples-Jones. I would have said Terrace Marshall before the game, so you don't want to play the outcome there. But those type of guys that you've sort of been seeing what happens, there's an opportunity now for him. The rest of the end of season schedule, depending on how long he's out, is very favorable.
Okay, offensive line and defensive news. The Cardinals' offensive line is such a mess right now. Very, very injured. Keep that in mind. That's a bad thing for the run game against the Rams.
Yeah.
Defensively, we saw Jason Verrett for the Niners. He hadn't played yet, but he was working his way back, and he tore his Achilles, and it's very sad for them. Didn't see an update on Jeffrey Simmons or Bud Dupree, but
that defense is beat up bad. Yeah. Titans defense is beat up bad. And if those guys are out, then Broncos run game could look really, really good this week.
We still don't know about TJ Watt, but I know he's optimistic about playing. Jordan Poyer and Tremaine Edmonds missed practice again for the Bills. Kyer Elam, cornerback, he missed practice, but Dane Jackson was back. Dane Jackson and Matt Milano were making progress. So those are the big ones. Oh, Arizona safety Budda Baker and cornerback Byron Murphy. They missed practice on Thursday. Those are huge.
Those are their 2 best defensive backs.
Yeah, we got to pay attention to that for their game against John Wolford and the Rams.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, let's beat the waiver wire here. And all right. Not so much looking at next week. I mean, I was going to recommend Daniel Jones, but he's actually rostered in about 80% of leagues because I think that means people are buying into him against the Texans.
But his projections on our side are very high.
Yeah, he's at the Lions next week. I guess you could look at Giants wide receivers against the Lions next week. But how do you guys
the
feel?
Kenny Galladay revenge game. That's why he's getting healthy this week.
Hey. How do you guys feel about Kyron Williams? How do you feel about Odell Beckham? We still have Jalen Warren out there. We still have Latavius Murray out there. How do you feel about those guys?
So first of all, what's the rostership on Slayton?
Good question.
You look that up. I read a story, Jordan Rodriguez.
Percent.
How much is it? I'm sorry.
57. And Wanda.
Okay, so he's still out there. I'd rather have him than Matt Collins, just as an example. Jordan Rodriguez does a great job covering the Rams. She had a 10 question post on The Athletic. And one of her very first posts was that Kyron Williams is expected to have a meaningful role. That's my word, not hers, when he is activated. So I'm glad you brought him up. I don't know if there's a Rams running back that I feel great about, but he's in that stash territory of someone that you can pick up and see what happens. And he's a good pass catcher out of the backfield. That's what he was best at Notre Dame. So I wonder if they use him in that role and maybe he becomes a 10 PPR point floor guy.
Would you drop Cam Akers for him?
I don't have Cam on any of my teams.
You have an IR spot. You can still stash him.
But
sure.
He might be activated this week. So in theory, if would you rather have?
If you're not using Cam Akers, then sure, why not? I mean, if you're never going to play Cam Akers, just take the chance on the upside play.
All right, 0 to 10, your level of interest in adding Odell Beckham.
It really comes down to how deep your bench is, because if you only have a 5-person bench, there's no way you can pick him up. If you have an 8-person bench, then there's a much more significant interest.
Elijah Moore going to move into the slot maybe next week. Elijah Moore.
On a side note, we had a very good interview with Josina Anderson with Robert Saleh on CBS Sports HQ. If you could find it on YouTube, I would recommend it because he talked about that. That's where he first brought it up. Similar to Beckham, if you have a deep bench, why not? See what happens. But he's probably better suited to play outside than he is to play in the slot. Hopefully, just opens up the targets.
I'd rather have Jalen Warren. I think I'd rather have Kyron Williams.
All right, we still have Donovan Peoples-Jones available in almost 60% of leagues. We got Jarvis Landry, 70% available. Nico Collins, Treylon Burks, 26%. Christian Watson, 12%.
The rookie receivers are interesting. I don't think you have to prioritize them, though.
And just to get ahead of the game, remember the Jaguars, Dolphins, Seahawks, and Buccaneers are on a bye. It is a bad quarterback week. So with that said, let's see some of the quarterbacks who are available. And there's one that's interesting, not guaranteed to play, but Carson Wentz is eligible to come off IR next week. They get the Texans.
Yeah. If Heineke has a terrible game, they might go back to him. That would make some sense. Daniel Jones makes some sense because he's
too rostered though. He's 80.
Is he? Oh, okay. Never mind.
That's what I was saying. I think people are buying into Daniel Jones against the Texans. The Texans have been a bad matchup for quarterbacks for what it's worth.
That's true.
If in a shallower league, Russell Wilson's available, he gets the Raiders next week. He has a very good schedule going forward just to begin with. I was going to recommend Mariota against the Bears, but you can't do that anymore. Heineke himself, let's see. Who does Andy Dalton have next week? Dalton has the Rams.
The Rams.
Oh.
Can they please bench him already?
So look, it's really not a bad idea to try to get a quarterback if you can. It might have to be Heineke if Russell Wilson's not available. But you're going to have a lot of competition because Tua, Brady, Geno Smith, and who is the other team on bye? And Trevor Lawrence. They're all on bye next week.
You're going to see potentially, though, these are the type of things you want to look for if people drop them on Thursday or Friday, Sunday morning. Stafford, if he doesn't play, may get dropped because people have to make a roster move. They get the Saints. That's a decent matchup if Lattimore's out. You mentioned Russell Wilson. Not everybody buying back into him. The Patriots, DST, if they've been dropped, those type of things you want to look for. Mm-hmm. They get the Jets. I know the Jets have looked better, but still, it's Zach Wilson against Bill Belichick in Foxborough. Those type of things are the ones that help you win.
And the Patriots DST has been dropped. They're 85% rostered. It's still very rostered, but this reminds me a lot of the Eagles and the Cowboys DSTs. Who I have 7 leagues.
The Ravens
on CBS. Too. Yeah. I have 7 leagues on CBS, and in 2 of those leagues, the Eagles got dropped for their bye, and the Cowboys in 2 leagues. So 85% rostered. No, they're not widely available, but worth checking certainly on the Patriots DST.
I think the thing that, just advice for people moving forward when you get in these situations, wait until Saturday to drop these DSTs if you'd like to try and get a chance to get them back.
Yeah.
Because if you do it before then, you're giving everybody a chance that has an open roster spot to get them. Like I have the Patriots, I'm just waiting because I can't drop anybody else. So I'm just waiting until Saturday to drop them, and then I'll take my chances trying to get them back.
Okay, let's do one question for each game, and we're going to start in Munich, Seattle at Tampa Bay. Starter sit Leonard Fournette, and now we're having a long discussion about the Bucs offense. It's going to be the first game we do. Jamie's got Brady as the start of the week, but we didn't talk too much about Fournette. I don't think we talked about him at all yesterday. So starter sit Leonard Fournette against Seattle.
He's a reluctant start for me. He's in that same type of box as Montgomery and Najee. You're hoping he finds the end zone. You know he's going to play, hopefully, half the snaps for Tampa Bay. But you don't feel good about it.
All right, next game is Philadelphia at Washington. I'm going to give you 3 players. Jamie, who's your favorite flex? Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, or Devontae Smith?
Antonio Gibson.
Followed by
McLaurin, followed by Smith.
Okay. Dave, how would you order them? Gibson, McLaurin, Smith.
I would order them McLaurin. I think I'd probably take my chances on the upside of Smith over Gibson.
All right, it's pretty interesting. I mean, I feel like you know kind of what to do with your Eagles. Smith is always interesting, but great matchup for Antonio Gibson. And if the score gets out of hand, that might not be bad either. Because
love that for him. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think McKissick had like 6 catches in the first meeting, but that, of course, was with Carson Wentz. All right, Detroit.
And no Jordan Davis.
Oh, who?
And no Jordan Davis.
Right, exactly, yeah. Detroit at Chicago. Can we really trust any Bears players other than Justin Fields, Dave Richard?
Any who players? Bears players? Yeah. I think the same thing I said about Fournette, you can say about Montgomery. I think Mooney is an okay number 3 receiver. I think Kmet is probably at the top of the top as far as streaming tight ends go. They've been scheming him up a lot more in the last 2 weeks. So I don't mind recommending him. But that's it. That's all I like. No Claypool.
But the only one you really like is Fields, I'm guessing, right?
You have to start Justin Fields. He's been playing so well.
No, it was more of, do you like David Montgomery in this matchup, or do you love David Montgomery?
Like.
Okay.
But it's like a okay. That kind of like.
You're giving
him let's go out for cheeseburgers, but you're buying them from a guy on the side of the road.
You're giving him a Valentine's Day card. Would it be one with like a rest?
It would be a piece of paper that I folded in half and wrote "Happy Valentine's Day, dude" inside.
Oh, okay. I remember I used to have the ones at the time WWF wrestlers Happy Valentine's Day. Yeah. Those are good times. Dallas at Green Bay. If all 4 running backs play, who is the best running back in this game, Jamie?
If all 4 running backs play, Jones.
Dave Jones.
Agreed. It's going to be a Packer sandwich. I'm just not sure what's in between the buns.
Okay. Arizona at the Rams. We already talked about Cooper Kupp. He's going to be a start no matter what. Starter sit James Conner.
I would sit him if you can.
I like Fournette better.
Yeah, Fournette or Connor? Also Fournette, Jamie?
Fournette, yeah.
Okay. Houston at the Giants. Do you start anyone in this game other than the running backs?
I would not be surprised. You can't trust it if Brandon Cooks goes off in this game just based on the narrative. But no, can't trust it.
Darius Slayton is a great bye-week wide receiver, maybe an okay number 3 wide receiver.
I got a text message from our producer, Zach Brook, big Washington fan, who has reminded me it is Washington at Philadelphia, not Philadelphia at Washington. Thank you, Zach. That is a Monday night game. And yeah, Philadelphia is at Washington is at Philadelphia. I did it again. All right. Seattle at Tampa Bay. Now, what's that? Well, Seattle in Munich at Tampa Bay.
Okay.
Now, in order to make this show less than an hour and 30 minutes, remember the old Mike D'Antoni 7 seconds or less? Sum up this game in 7 words or less, Dave. Seattle at Tampa Bay. It's
Oh,
not.
I know what this is all about.
No.
Go ahead.
No, you know what? Sum it up. Seven words or less. Should be a very good game. There you go. That's all you have to say.
No, play your music. Go
No,
ahead.
no, it's not. No, it's not.
Those are my 7 words or less.
Seattle and Tampa Bay. Jamie, if you look at this game, actually, I committed to being quicker today. I committed to getting into the games faster. So I'm not going to
Should
give
have
all
played
this
the
stuff.
song already.
I'm not. This is not the game of the week. Stop. All right, Jamie, I'm going to give you the first word. I want to know how confident both of you are in Tom Brady, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin specifically. I know he's the start of the week, and Jamie, go for it.
Very confident in Brady. Very confident in Godwin. Very confident in Evans.
Dave.
Less confident in Brady. Very not confident in Godwin. Very okay with Mike Evans.
Okay, so Jamie obviously is putting his chips in for Tom Brady. Dave, how do you feel about Tom Brady?
I think he'll be okay. I've got him ranked as a top 10 quarterback this week, but how do you ignore what he's done over the last 5 games where there have been times where he's close and he should have had a monster fantasy game. Last week, tougher matchup, but this is still a tough matchup. But last week, tougher matchup, barely moved the ball into the red zone. And he really looked, the whole offense looked anemic until the last 2 minutes of the game. I'm nervous that he's going to come through with another game of 18 to 21 fantasy points. Same old for Brady. 300 yards, that's easy. 2 touchdowns. I don't think he can do it. I think part of the problem is that he doesn't have enough downfield separators. He's got Evans, but he's made a bunch of mistakes. I don't think Godwin's running like he used to. Scotty Miller makes mistakes. Cade Otton's interesting. If he ends up playing, I like his chances, but if Cameron Brate's back, Otton's off the field potentially for half the game. So I can't buy into what Brady can be and what Jamie's vision for Brady is, knowing what I've seen for the past few weeks and knowing that Seattle's defense, what is it, 21 or more fantasy points at 2 of the last 3 quarterbacks they've faced. I think that's the stat. I think it's 21, and it's not bad, but you can 22, whatever it is. But I feel like that's right around what you should expect from Brady. And
yeah,
I'm sorry to
Herbert
keep going.
And Kyler were those 2 quarterbacks, and Kyler had 60 rushing yards.
Okay, and 22 fantasy points is going to get him into the top 10 at quarterback this week.
Yeah,
and that's where I've got him ranked.
All right, Jamie, what is it about Tom Brady that you're excited about? Is it just the fact that he's Tom Brady and eventually he has to get better?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's you're getting a high volume of pass attempts. It's 7 straight games with 40+ attempts. So you're getting that. 3 of those games over 300 yards. Dave referenced that. So I think we'll see him get that. I think we might get 250+ at the half. He's 258 from breaking Blake Bortles' record of most passing yards in international games. He's typically aware of those type of things. So I would not be surprised if he comes out throwing early and has success, mostly because they can't run the ball. But we said it time and time again, there's been a lack of multiple touchdowns. He has 1 game with multiple touchdowns. If he gets the second touchdown because he hasn't been turning the ball over, then he's going to have a relatively big game. If he somehow manages to get to 3 touchdowns, which, by the way, he's done in every international game he's played, then I think we're looking at a potential top 3 game for him this week. Now, will he do that against Seattle? It's hard to say. We've made a lot of excuses. Last week, it was Scotty Miller dropping an easy touchdown, hit him in the hands, and then Cade Otton if he gets a touchdown at the end. So there is a play every week or a situation every week that has been taking him away from the second touchdown. So can that finally happen? I think that's the case. And I do think this is a game based on Seattle's secondary that you can beat them up a little bit from the inside out. Not to stay away from Mike Evans, because I don't think that's ever going to happen, especially with the receiving core being what it is. But I do think this is a Chris Godwin game. By the way, both guys have been getting consistent double-digit targets. So at some point, all these guys are going to come together and have a good game. I do think it happens this week.
Okay. This, I would say, I don't really know. I love advanced stats, but I don't know how useful they are, but I don't
Depends
know
on the stat.
I don't know how useful conventional stats are when it comes to just predicting the future, but I think Chris Godwin might have the worst advanced stats of any player I've seen. There are 69 wide receivers that have had 30 or more targets. 69 wide receivers with 30 or more targets. He has the lowest average route depth of all of those receivers. And actually, it wouldn't be that big of a deal if his catch rate were higher, because some of the guys that are in the bottom 5 are like Rondell Moore, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. You can get away with having a very low route depth. What's weird about Godwin is he has like a 64% catch rate. That is unbelievable. It should be well over 70% with the routes that he's running. I cannot tell you what's going on there. I just know that the Godwin Brady connection is just broken right now. And I don't really know what else to say. I've broken it down, but I hadn't seen that stat before. I knew he was running short routes. I didn't realize it was basically the shortest in the NFL of any wide receiver, and he's not catching enough of them. So that's really the big issue with Godwin, guys. I don't know. What do you make of that, Dave?
Well, you see it in his receiving average. It's way lower. I believe it's way lower than it's ever been in his career. And if it's not, it's got to be close.
But you can talk about touchdown regression for Godwin.
Yeah, I don't know if he's got an end zone target.
How about just catch? I think he does. How about just catch regression? Because he should be. There is no reason why he shouldn't be catching 73, 74% of his passes. That would make a big difference, you know. But also the yak is just not there. I mean, they're just getting nothing after the catch. So, all right, we'll see. Hopefully,
I'd like to see how many red zone and end zone targets he's had this year.
Actually,
and I've got it. 7 red zone targets, 0 end zone targets, 0.
Yeah, but what about inside the 10? Like, there's
Let's
some
see.
of those, no?
Let's see. Inside the 10, he has. Take a guess.
3.
Jamie?
It's 0, isn't it?
I'll say 0.
It's 4.
Oh, yeah. See, I knew it was not bad.
4 inside the 10 targets in 7 games. What do you think it was last year?
Well, first of all, let's call it 6 games because he barely played against the Cowboys.
That's just an Azer stat.
I don't know. What was it?
Really speeding the show up, by the way.
Yeah, what was it last year?
8.
Okay. So
if we keep this going, we'll be on the air by the time the game kicks off.
Geno Smith or Tom Brady?
We need to break down Brashad Perryman, guys.
We needed to break down their passing game. Geno Smith or Brady? You say Geno.
Yes.
Brady, but both should be good.
Okay. All right. Ken Walker must start. Let's talk about Leonard Fournette. And you said you'd start him over James Conner. Would you start Leonard Fournette or Miles Sanders?
Sanders.
Even in PPR, Sanders has like 1 catch in his last 3 games.
Super. Sanders also has a lot of touchdowns, and he plays on a better offense that can run the ball. And he's not being threatened for playing time by a spicy young rookie.
Okay, so would you play Leonard Fournette or Khalil Herbert?
Fournette.
How about Montgomery?
Montgomery and non-Fournette and PPR.
Okay, Montgomery and non-Fournette and PPR. How about Rachaad White? I mean, would you start Rachaad White or like a Broncos running back?
I would start Rachaad White unless we get the injury news on the Titans that it's that bad, that Simmons and Dupree and Cunningham are out. Then I would go with a Broncos guy. But it's so hard to figure out which Broncos guy. That's the problem. So you're hoping for Murray to find the end zone. That would be my preferred one. But at this point, Rachaad White, I'm very surprised that our projection, Sportsline has him projected for a very high number. So that's a little interesting that the model that Stephen O uses is spinning out that type of number. We just have no indication that Leonard Fournette is getting benched. He's losing touches, but he's not getting benched. If Fournette was getting benched, Rachaad White would be a must-start guy.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So he's more of a desperation flex.
What about Lockett and Metcalf? Must-start guys?
Yes.
Yep. Lockett first.
Okay. And Noah Fant?
It is a little surprising that the NFL, their marketing, the 2 billboards that they're using are Tom Brady for the Bucs and Metcalf for the Seahawks.
Well, he's got like green hair sometimes, you know?
He has 2 nose rings.
That's a lot of That's 2 more than I have. All right. So Noah Fant, real quick. Any interest?
Top 20 tight end.
He's not playing the Cardinals.
No, he's only 2 games against the Cardinals.
But Cade Otton has the best matchup in the world. And the Seahawks gave up the most fantasy points to tight ends. And Cade Otton has double-digit PPR fantasy points in 3 of 4 games that he has played without Cameron Brate. So what's the deal with Cameron Brate and starter sit Cade Otton?
Cameron Brate practiced in full. I was trying to find out. I'm assuming he made the trip to Munich. They left this morning or late last night. And I'm guessing he was there because the only list I saw was the players who did not go, which Russell Gage is one of them, for example. Now, the question becomes is, does Cameron Brate replace Cade Otton as the primary pass-catching tight end? So he's going to lose snaps, Otton is, but has he done anything to lose the pass-catching role? I don't think so. Pete Prisco doesn't think so. We'll find out if the Bucs think so. But Brate was very uninspiring as a receiver. Cade Otton has been very good as a receiver. So why would you take that off the field if you're Tom Brady?
What are we going to do if Cameron Brate is playing? Are we going to start Cade Otton?
So I originally started the week with Cade Otton as a top 5 tight end. He's now back end number 1 tight end. So if you are comfortable enough with him by comparison to Cole Kmet, if you're comfortable enough with him by comparison to Greg Dulcich, I would start Dulcich, but I can see the debate either way. If we find out, and I'm going to reach out to the people I know that cover the Bucs, that Otton is still a pass catching role, then all systems go. But if Brate's going to take him off the field, then you got to be worried.
All right. Next game, Washington to Philadelphia. Jamie, play the game. Sum this game up in 7 words or less.
Start all Eagles. Sit Curtis Samuel.
Okay. Start all Eagles. Does that include Devontae Smith?
Number 3 receiver.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So let's talk about that because there are some big weeks left, right? But we're just getting very few pass attempts from Jalen Hurts. 25 to 28 pass attempts in 4 of his last 5 games, and Devontae Smith just does not do well when that is the case. So earlier you guys debated Smith versus McLaurin. Well, you didn't really debate it, but you ranked them differently. I think Dave, you like McLaurin better. Oh, maybe Jamie, you
factor in Gibson. I like Gibson the best.
My bad.
I like Gibson, McLaurin, Smith. I think Dave likes the receivers over Gibson.
I do.
Okay. So you both like McLaurin over Smith.
We do.
Yeah. I mean, this is an interesting one because McLaurin had a great game against them.
Smith had a monster game.
Yeah, Smith had an even better game.
But that was the squeaky wheel game, though.
For Devontae Smith, yeah. Well,
yeah, that was prior to that game was Nick Sirianni talking him up.
And McLaurin kind of took Darius Slay to school in that game, but he doesn't that was surprising because last year he didn't do well against the Eagles. He's got a history of not doing great against great corners. So
I don't love McLaurin in this game, but I think at least you trust that if they're chasing points, the target's probably a little bit safer for him than they are for Smith. Because if the Eagles don't necessarily feature Smith early and they're up big, it's probably minimal production coming his way.
Okay, let's do McLaurin. Would you start McLaurin or Deontay Johnson?
McLaurin. I'm not starting Deontay Johnson.
It's close in PPR, though, because the targets will be close.
In full PPR, would you start McLaurin or Rondale Moore if Kyler Murray plays?
McLaurin.
Rondale.
McLaurin or Josh Palmer?
Palmer.
I believe I have Palmer ranked higher. You want one more reason for optimism with McLaurin? His target share with Taylor Heineke is almost 30%.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. All right, Devontae Smith or Darnell Mooney?
Mooney.
I have Mooney 1 spot higher than Smith, but they're both in that boom bust high end number 3 receiver Gabe Davis range. Both ahead of Gabe Davis, by the way.
All right, and we know Goddard, Hurts, A.J. Brown must start, sitting Logan Thomas, probably trying to sit Curtis Samuel and Heineke. So that brings us to Antonio Gibson, who, had a bad game, but there's big opportunity here. What's the updated stat? With Jordan Davis off the field, the Eagles are allowing now 5.86 yards per carry to running backs. Unbelievably bad. All right, Jamie. So you guys have Gibson 20th. I think Dave has him 27th. Is that right? Or are those old rankings? No, 24th. 21st for Jamie, 24th for Dave, and Heath has Gibson 19th. Jonathan Taylor or Antonio Gibson?
Taylor.
There's more upside with Taylor if he's Taylor.
Yeah, but Gibson, I mean, you can see a lot of upside, right?
Huge.
Yeah. So talk to me about how you're approaching him.
Well, I think first off, they got to get back to throwing the ball. Last week was a little strange that they got away from that, but the Eagles don't necessarily give up a lot of production to pass catching running backs, aside from what they did to McKissick earlier in this matchup. He scored against them. Gibson did. He was more the primary running back at that point. But I think again, when you play out game scripts, this is the game script that you like for him. Eagles up big, him chasing points. We saw that 2 weeks ago when he had 7 catches. Prior to that, he had the first 2 games with Taylor Heineke, 10 catches, and he scored 2 touchdowns through the air. So it's an opportunity against a run defense that's a little bit weaker and a game script that should be favorable. So I think he can, get to that 12 to 14 PPR point range without scoring. And if he scores, he'll have a big production.
If Zeke plays, you starting Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, or Antonio Gibson?
That's a good one.
I would start Gibson probably over Pollard in PPR. Zeke over both. Cowboys don't
Zeke
catch
over both.
Zeke would be number 1 for you?
Zeke over Gibson and Pollard, yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I could see that in non-PPR, but I think I'd flip it in PPR. I might go Gibson first in PPR. I don't want to say that he's going to totally suck. I think the floor's 10 PPR points. I think that's solid. 16% target share from Taylor Heineke this year. That's good. When he's actually on the field, his target per route run rate is almost 1/3 of Heineke's throws. That's really high. It's just a matter of how much Heineke will throw to him. It's 14 targets in 3 games. It's not bad. The game script really has to go Gibson's way. And if it does, then he's got a shot to be really good. I think he's going to be their main running back. I would expect him to play like 55, 60% of the snaps. He just has to be effective with the touches that he gets. Half PPR, not PPR. I think he's easy to get away from. It's that full PPR where there's a chance he gets 5 catches and 40 yards. I think that's where it gets a little sticky. 10 to 12 PPR points.
And you're going to want to try to get away from Brian Robinson. It just doesn't really feel like the game for him.
Unless they're playing with the lead.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
Right.
But it could. And that's it. And Philadelphia's DST is top 2. All right, Detroit at Chicago, your stat of the game. The Lions allow the most everything to everyone. They are awful. Dave, can you give me 7 words to describe this game?
Oh, you might play the music again, though.
I haven't played. What are you talking about?
Oh, here it comes. Now I know it's happening.
It's the game of the week, yeah. 7 words to describe it. The game of the week, yeah. Bad defenses, Detroit, Chicago. All right, Dave, you're on to my tricks. It's getting hard here. I might have to do this to Heath next week. But anyway, Detroit and Chicago is the game of the week, and I'm just expecting a typical, a lot of points, and probably a close game. So
it's gonna be a high-scoring game. There's no defense on either side. Jared Goff's gonna get you 30 fantasy points.
You have a
Justin Fields too, yeah.
You have him 9th, Jared Goff.
I do.
Am I right about that? Nice.
Yeah, I love him. I like him better than Brady. When he's not pressured, he's fantastic. And it's even been that way recently. His last 3 touchdowns over the last 2 games. Not that that's like a huge selling point, but it's when he's not pressured. The Bears traded Robert Gibson. They can't get pressure on anybody. They're going to have to dial up crazy blitzes. Maybe that works out for them, but I think St. Brown has a huge game. I think Jared Goff has a very nice game. And I'm trying to trade for him in a couple of leagues just to use him for this week. I'm excited about the potential of it being a high-scoring game.
And by the way, the whole 7 words or less thing was really just a setup.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't fall for that. Yeah.
It was a bad segment. So
But the thing that you screwed up with was when you should have, when you asked me the 7 words or less, then when Dave started talking, you should have did it with the other game.
Exactly.
What other game?
I mean, it could have been this game, but
Yeah,
when
but
you said that,
I was saving it for this game. This is the
right,
game.
but you
But you were also saving it for me.
Your
And
setup
so if
was
you had
bad
asked-
because what you should have done was ask me 7 words or less, like you did, was what you told me you were going to do. And then when you, Dave, what is your thoughts? Then you should have played.
Yeah. Like you got to get more creative.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That's
Yeah.
what I thought your setup was.
I should have gone to you for that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Come on, man. You gotta scheme it up a little bit.
Oh, that would have been so much better. All right, what do we do with the Lions running backs? Which is a big question mark every week, Jamie.
I think they're going to run all over the Bears. So, Jamal Williams just had a game where they won and he had 24 carries. And so I'd be very surprised if it's not a 30 carry game unless they're just getting destroyed, which I can't see that happening either. So, 30 carries is well within the range of both Swift and Williams. Williams is the guy you have to trust at this point. Swift is not a bad back end RB2 flex play. If you have both, I don't know if you want to play both, but I can see Goff being good. I don't see him to the same level Dave has it, because I don't think without his weapons he's going to be as fantastic. If there's no Reynolds, without Hawkinson, I just don't think he's going to get enough numbers just from Amon-Ra St. Brown alone. So, this is a running back game for me. I think it's Williams and Swift.
A running back has run for 80 or more yards in 5 of the last 8 games, 94 or more yards in 4 of the last 8 games against the Bears. A running back scored 16 or more PPR fantasy points in 7 of the last 8 games against the Bears. So both teams just really struggle against the run. Well, who's the best running back in the game?
Williams.
Agreed.
Second best.
Montgomery.
Any
you got to ask third best.
Who's the third best?
I think it's Swift.
Yeah. Any hesitation on Amon-Ra St. Brown, who actually has kind of similar stats to Chris Godwin, with very low route depth and really only one game with a lot of yards. He's actually kind of been disappointing other than that Washington game. But any hesitation at all with Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Nope.
No, this is the perfect setup for him. Everybody's gone, and bad defense, and so this should be a game where he's back to being a target hog. And if you're buying into Jared Goff having a big game, there's no way he's having a big game without Amon-Ra St. Brown playing.
Right. I feel like he should get some end zone targets. Last week it was the tight ends getting those touchdowns. I feel like St. Brown could easily get those. And
what a game for their family.
Oh yeah, we got the St. Brown matchup.
Yeah, remember it was week 1 or 2. They scored a touchdown within 2 seconds of each other.
It was very cool.
Yeah.
Dave, you like Jared Goff. Do you like Khalif Raymond at all? He's had some big games, and Josh Reynolds not likely to play, it seems.
He's had at least 9 PPR points in 3 of his past 4, and he's had 5 catches. When did he have him? He had him in weeks, I don't know, early October, a couple games in early October. He's kind of a big play guy, and they're running out of bodies. I think Jamie's point on that is fair, that they don't have Hawkinson. They're not going to have Reynolds. So how do they stretch the field? I think they use a little bit more of Raymond in that regard. And they've got a multitude of like mediocre tight ends that they can just mix and match. 2 of them scored last week. So I wonder if they get involved when they're in the red zone. I think DeAndre Swift gets involved in the passing game more this week. He looked good when he played. He just didn't play that much. Only 25% of the snaps in the first half, only 2 snaps in the second half. I think he gets a little bit more work. I kind of like him as a borderline number 2 running back in full PPR. I think he matters. I think St. Brown gets a ton. And then I'm not starting any of the other guys, including Raymond, unless I'm desperate. But one of those guys will score too.
For the Bears, Jamie, who are the quarterbacks you're starting ahead of Justin Fields?
Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Tua.
If Josh Allen plays, Fields or Allen?
I have it ranked right now with Josh Allen playing, and he's behind those guys.
Right, he's right behind Fields. Okay,
but hold on. If Josh Allen's arm was okay, he'd be ahead of Fields, right?
If his arm was okay, but his arm is not okay. So
correct. I'm just saying, if it were, you would.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, me too.
Montgomery is an RB2, even in this great matchup. He gets about 14 to 15 carries, and
had at least 15 touches 3 straight games.
There have been 4 games this year where the Lions have allowed multiple running backs to score double-digit PPR fantasy points. The Eagles, Commanders, Vikings, and Cowboys. So it gives you a little bit of hope for Khalil Herbert. But basically, he needs to have a big play to have a good game. Otherwise, there's a very low floor for Herbert. All right, Darnell Mooney. So Claypool didn't play much. He only ran 16 routes, I think, last week. So that's just something to keep in mind.
But it's encouraging they got 6 targets on 16 routes.
It is actually pretty encouraging. And
he had a drop too, so he's right back in his Steelers form.
Mooney, I'm going to give you running backs. Mooney or Gibson?
Gibson.
Mooney
or Connor?
Mooney.
That's closer.
You like Connor over Gibson?
Yeah, I do.
Ooh.
I think I have Mooney higher than both those guys.
Mooney or a running back in this game, in this very game?
I'd go Jamal.
I would go Jamal. I would go Montgomery, and I would go Swift for upside over Mooney.
Since the Bears mini bye, this is their last 3 games. Mooney's target share has been 27%, 11.7 yards per catch.
Target share for this team is such a joke, though.
They're starting to throw a lot more than they did in the first 4 games.
28 times was a season high. Target share in these situations is so stupid.
I know, but 2 red zone targets. It is what it is. 2 red zone targets, 3 end zone targets. 30% of his catches have been explosive plays.
I like the thing that they did last week, though. So first game with Claypool and 28 attempts, and it was 18 of those went to Mooney, Kmet, and Claypool.
Yeah, makes sense.
Was it a third, and a third?
I mean, I don't. I know they at least all had 6. I don't know if there was one that had 7
I'm
and one.
checking right now. Mooney had 8, so 8, 6, and Claypool had 6, like you said. It's pretty good. Starting to get a little concentrated in Chicago.
Targets between the 3. All right, Cole Kmet. Let's finish up on Cole Kmet. You guys have him as a borderline start. Heath is lower on him. You'd start Dulcich over him. You would start still Otten over Kmet?
I would start Otten over Kmet in PPR. I would start Kmet over Otten in non-PPR. He's a touchdown guy now.
Cameron Brate doesn't play, then it's easily Otten in any format.
Easily, yeah.
Gerald Everett or Kmet?
Everett.
I would start Everett in PPR. I would start Kmet in non-PPR. It's funny because his 3 touchdowns the last 2 weeks more than Everett has all season.
How about Robert Tonyan or Kmet?
Kmet.
All right. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Dallas is at Green Bay. What is that?
It's the start of the week or the game of the week song.
Game of the week for Dallas Green Bay.
We need to start. No. I was just singing it because we just got done talking about it.
Okay. All right. Game of the week is over. Dallas at Green Bay is next. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. Here is your Green Bay stinks / your stat of the game. The Packers have lost 5 in a row. They have not scored more than 22 points in any of those games. And Green Bay sees the fewest pass attempts per game in the NFL. And that, I think, is why Heath is so concerned about Dak Prescott. He doesn't throw much, and he's facing a team that is extremely slow-paced, doesn't score, sees the fewest fewest pass attempts per game in the NFL. You guys like Dak more than Heath does. You have him like top 7, I think. Jamie, thoughts on Dak Prescott?
I think you'll get 27 to 30 pass attempts again. Not going to be much more than that unless this game gets sideways, but it's hard to expect that to happen with how the Packers offenses look. But I think you're still looking at the Cowboys. I'm viewing it as they're trying to get Dak Prescott back to being a top-tier quarterback from the standpoint of to win in the playoffs. He's going to have to be probably in some situations where he's throwing a lot, depending on who they face and how far they go. So I think they need to get him in a little bit more of a rhythm. Is enough of a rhythm 21 of 27 like we saw against the Bears? Maybe, but he also was efficient in that matchup. I don't think he's going to necessarily be much better than 250 and 2 because, again, the lack of volume. So that's kind of why he's in the range where he is. And I don't think Heath has him that far from that. But I know Heath is sort of looking at the quarterback position this week as being bad across the board, as 20 to 22 points being kind of a top 6 or 7 guy, which is why he has Garoppolo where he does. So, can he get that 3rd touchdown like he got against Chicago where he got 34 yards rushing and ran one in? That's going to be, I think, the difference between making him potential top 5 quarterback and then a back-end top 10 guy. I don't see him falling completely on his face like he did in his first game back against Detroit. But other side of it is, without Zeke there, do they give the entire backfield 30 carries? They're going to max out Tony Pollard probably about 16. I think that's where they want him to live. So with the other guys there, are they going to ramp it up enough, and run the ball enough? Remember, they got a defensive score against the Bears. It takes away a couple pass attempts too, from a drive. So, he might have been at 30. I think you just cap it at 30 and see what he does in terms of pass attempts per day.
Yeah, 16 carries, by the way, would be a career high for Pollard. He's never had more than 14. And if he has 16 carries, if Tony Pollard has 16 carries, he will be a top blank running back this week.
7, 6.
I mean, it's hard to say those 2 more carries are going to, dramatically.
Right. I mean,
if he has 14 carries, he doesn't usually get 14 carries.
Right.
Last week.
But he did the one game without Zeke. So.
Right. I'm just saying he doesn't need that many carries against this run defense to be amazing. Amazing. He's so good. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there, but he's not gonna have a 20 carry game. You should know that. That'd be a surprise for Tony Pollard based on the way their running backs coach just talked about him.
Jamie, did you mention the Packers defense right now and the state of Green Bay's D?
I mean, you were listening, so no, I didn't. So Rashawn Gary's out. That's a big part of their pass rush, but he's also a big contributor to the run defense. And so, Eric Stokes is also out. That could help as well, or he's banged up in their secondary. So we'll see.
He should be out. I actually haven't seen anything on him.
He was in a walking boot after last week's game, but yeah, I would anticipate him not playing.
Yeah, and that's a big loss for them. He did not practice Wednesday. I didn't see a Thursday practice report on starting cornerback Eric Stokes. Okay, so Dave, this game, by the way, just for everybody knows in the rankings, Dave and Jamie have Dak Prescott ahead of Kyler, ahead of Cousins.
Ahead of everybody except for Mahomes, Hurts, Tua, Fields, and Geno. Now, that's me. I don't know.
Jamie has Brady ahead of Geno, but not ahead of – no, sorry.
Okay.
Jamie has Prescott ahead of Geno, but not –
Yeah, there's more upside for Brady this week if he hits.
All right, so no streamers over Dak for Dave and Jamie. Heath would disagree. This game is a headache, Dave, because we don't know about Aaron Jones and Ezekiel Elliott. So
correct.
What the
Not
heck?
a headache if you have Tony Pollard.
Well, but it could be if Zeke plays.
I'm starting him anyway. I mean,
I would too.
The only league I have him in, I don't really have another good option, but I still think he could have a good game here.
I would be very surprised if Zeke plays based on what he said.
Yeah, they don't. Or he could play and only, play 25% of the snaps, and they do one of those easing him in type things. That might actually be the smartest thing for the Dallas to do. Not that Dallas does the smartest things with their football team, but that could be a very intelligent play for them.
Okay, so what about the Packers guys? Like, what if Aaron Jones doesn't play? How much faith would you have in A.J. Dillon, who's having a pretty crummy year?
He's been crummy, but he would see 15 touches and would catapult into the top 24 at running back for sure.
He'd be better than Najee. He'd be better than Connor. He'd be better than Gibson in non-PPR. He'd be better than...
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Similar range for Montgomery. So right around 20.
Okay. Because there'd be a time where you would say, oh, he'd be top 10, but he's just not producing.
No, and this run defense is good.
Wide receiver.
Your whole defense is great.
Is it just Lamb and Lazard?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Schultz.
If I could nitpick, I think the Cowboys' run defense is their weakness. It's not
for sure by comparison. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
It seems kind of like an average run defense. And how much faith do you have in Lamb and Lazard? Because Lamb has like 7 targets in each of his last 2 games, and he's, doing a lot with them. And there's that, and then there's Lazard going up against a tough matchup.
He's not lived up to the expectations of being a top 5 or 6 receiver Lamb has, because the volume has not been there, and obviously Dak missing all that time didn't help. But I still think you're starting him. He's a number 2 receiver, and Lazard is the same thing. At some point Lazard's not going to score, and then you got to just worry that is his numbers overall enough to carry him. I think it's worth trusting, but this is the only guy Aaron Rodgers can rely on at this point. And so it could be garbage time. It could be, score early and keeps him in the game. He's had success against some pretty good defenses already this season, so I'm not getting away from Alan Lazard.
Yep, 76 yards and a touchdown against the Jets, 116 yards against the Patriots. And I'm not sure about the Cowboys' pass defense right now because they lost that starting cornerback. Sorry, what was his name? His name.
Yeah, the Detroit game. I know.
Lewis.
Yep.
Jordan Lewis. Yeah, a couple weeks ago they lost him, and they were awful against the Bears. And the week before that, I think they were a little shaky too. Oh no, that was
the game he got hurt against Detroit.
They were awful against the Bears, and they Khalif Raymond had 75. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something.
The thing about the Cowboys is, and this is where they get in trouble sometimes. It's what makes him a great player. Also, is when Trevon Diggs gambles, and so if he gambles and he misses, there's a lot of busts in their secondary, and so that's where you hope Lazard can make a play or two.
I'm going to rescind what I said. It was a bad game against the Bears. That's pretty much all it was. They obviously are a terrific defense. Robert Tonyan or Cole Kmet.
You already asked us that.
I did ask. You said Kmet, right?
Yeah. We committed to Kmet.
Committed.
Tonyan
stinks typically. One game with more than 37 yards. start the Cowboys DST. Arizona's at the Rams. Your stat of the game.
Can you imagine we just went through a whole Cowboys-Packers game and didn't even discuss Aaron Rodgers? That's how far
Oh
he's
my
fallen.
God. I should have discussed Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, there's nothing to discuss. You're not starting him.
By the way, those two teams, Cowboys and Packers, have the best pass rush, best pressure rates in football. But
Not anymore.
We'll see with the Packers now.
Not anymore.
Arizona at the Rams. Okay, the Cardinals give up the second most fantasy points to tight ends, 60 yards or a touchdown to a tight end in 7 of 9 games. Does it matter for Tyler Higbee?
No.
He played well enough against them the first time around. You know, something's got to change with his Rams offense, and it makes a lot of sense to get him going a little bit because it's a safety valve. Certainly, I think if John Walford plays, it's probably a little bit of a better option for him because, you know, Stafford may challenge down the field a little bit more, especially if the secondary is that beat up for the Cardinals. But it's such a good matchup. You know, I had an interesting situation in one of our leagues where it seems like there's a little bit of a glitch that I put in for, and it's funny because it involves Thomas Schaefer. It's our salary cap league. So I ran out of fab budget because I'm just scraping the bottom of the barrel trying to see if I can get back in the playoff hunt. And I put in for Komet for $1 bid, but my fab expired prior to getting to Komet. So like the 2 moves that I previously made. So because I put in for $1 bid for Komet, it negated it and said I could not pick him up instead of just getting for a $0 bid. The next day, Schaefer went in and picked him up as a free agent. So my only tight end, and compared to the guys on waivers, is Higbee. And so it's a weird situation. Like you would think like I have $0, right? Should just give it to me for a $0 bid, but it just didn't do that. So I would have preferred Komet over Higbee, but I just look at the matchup and I'll take my chances. You know, just hope that Higbee gets back on track a little bit. And if he was playing anybody else, no way. But the fact that the Cardinals are so bad against tight ends, it's just absolutely like look what they just did for Noah Fant. They just allowed Noah Fant to go for 7 catches and 96 yards. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. So Higbee is such an easy option to work into this game and get Stafford or Walford or Adam Azer easy targets and easy chances, whoever the quarterback may be there. I hope he comes through.
If we expect Kyler Murray to play, you guys don't have him ranked, I think, as you normally would. He has terrible history against the Rams and potentially a hamstring injury, which would slow him down in theory, Dave. So how do you feel about Kyler Murray?
I don't like it when he's hurt. We've seen it before that when he plays with an injury, he's nowhere near as effective. And it happens to be against the LA Rams, who are pretty good defensively. And you already mentioned the offensive line issues. So he's not going to have time to throw. And when he moves, he might not be quite as nimble as he's been before. So if he's relying on a ball out quick mentality this week, it's going to be an inefficient game. Doesn't have a great track record of getting a lot of touchdowns. I think he can get you 1. And it might, unless like there's a fluky play, something like that, a missed tackle, then it's going to be more than 1. But I have a hard time trusting him. I'm starting Jared Goff over Kyler Murray this week.
Garoppolo?
I believe I have Garoppolo ranked ahead of Kyler.
Russ?
I'm not there with Russ. And I certainly will have a harder time being there with Russ if Jeffrey Simmons is out. And that, although maybe he has an efficient game. I don't know. I just have a tough time with Russell Wilson.
Jamie, the Arizona running backs, obviously not Benjamin, but James Conner. Role-wise, there's a lot to like about Conner. Production-wise, there is not. How do you feel about him this week?
Would not be starting James Conner if you can. I mean, 1 touchdown on the season. You know, granted he missed 3 games with a rib injury, but he's just not run well. Like you mentioned, no Rodney Hudson, no Justin Pugh, no Will Hernandez. You know, the interior of the offensive line is just a disaster potentially. So I don't know. I mean, Conner will hopefully get 5 catches again. Will he do anything with it? That's hard to say. He just hasn't done much with it to begin with. So non-PPR, I think it's an easy fade. Half PPR, maybe. Full PPR, he's a borderline starter, but give me Antonio Gibson by a mile over him. Give me Montgomery over him. Give me, I'll still play Najee over him and Fournette over him. I just can't trust it.
Yeah. DeAndre Hopkins, we talked about earlier. He's a must start if Kyler plays. He's borderline number 1 receiver if Kyler doesn't play. So you're going to start DeAndre Hopkins. Rondale Moore. Starter sit Rondale Moore, Dave.
I even like him better if Kyler plays and isn't 100% and isn't going to run. And like I suggested, gets the ball out quickly. Because that's a good short area target. We've seen it from him for 2 years now, where he's not running that far downfield. Last year, he was barely running that far downfield. This year, at least, he's running a little bit more. Yeah, flex. Definitely a good flex in PPR.
Yeah, the
number 2 receiver for me in PPR. Last time these 2 teams met, he didn't play, and Greg Dortch got 10 targets in this game. So, this is an opportunity and an area to exploit for this Rams defense.
The Rams are 22nd against wide receivers. They've gotten better. They were really bad in week 1 against the Bills. They've gotten better throughout the year, but they're not the worst. And then Zach Ertz, this Rams team, they've allowed a tight end to score a touchdown in 2 straight games. That's only 3 touchdowns in their last 19 games. So it's rare. We've talked about a lot of, Dulcich, Kmet, Otten. How many of them are ahead of Ertz?
For me, 1, Dulcich.
Yeah, just Dulcich. But I don't think this is a great situation. Now, the flip side of that is Cole McCoy obviously loves Zach Ertz. In the game they played together last year, I think it was 1. It was against Seattle. We know they're bad against tight ends. I mean, that was almost a historic game for Zach Ertz. So
what was it?
It was like 9 for 88. It was just, I think 11 targets in that game. Might have been 2 touchdowns. It was fantastic. But again, Seattle, Ertz usually beats up on Seattle. Most tight ends beat up on Seattle. So just keep that in mind. But I do think that, McCoy won't be bad for Ertz as much so as maybe Kyler is, knowing that he's so in love with Hopkins and seemingly falling in love with Rondale Moore.
Yeah, good stat for Ertz is that he has the 3rd most targets in the NFL from the 10-yard line or closer. Only Justin Jefferson and Allen Robinson have more. And in the last 3 games with DeAndre Hopkins back, he still has 3 targets from that range, 10 yards out or closer. And that's 2nd in the NFL behind Austin Eckler. So, yes, the targets have definitely come down, but he's still an end zone option for Kyler. On the Rams side of the ball, if Stafford plays, start or sit?
Sit.
Are all those guys out for the Cardinals?
Good question.
Buda's been ruled out. I don't know on Murphy.
I would put Stafford in the same range as Jared Goff this week. Low end number 1 guy.
Your Jared Goff range, since I'm anointing him the next Phil Simms. I can't trust him. I don't trust that offensive line. I worry about turnovers with Stafford. I'd rather start Russell Wilson.
You go back to that game you reference all the time, Adam. He should have had a huge game against the Cardinals.
Yeah, he really was great against them. If Kupp catches that touchdown, it's 19 of 25 for almost 300 yards and a score at the Cardinals. We're not starting a Rams running back, right? And we're not starting anyone other than Cooper Kupp. And we already talked about Tyler Higbee. And which DST do you prefer?
Who's playing quarterback?
Walford and Kyler.
Yeah.
If it's Walford and Kyler, I would go Cardinals over Rams. If it's Stafford and Kyler, I would go Rams over Cardinals.
Cardinals are 2,700 on DraftKings.
But if it's Walford and
easy start. And McCoy, then don't.
I think the Steelers are 2,800. I would much prefer the Steelers.
Whatever.
Yeah, I'm saving the $100.
Houston at the Giants. Stat of the game. These 2 teams are both top 5 in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. Don't know.
Well, then
I don't really
get away from all these guys.
I'm gonna buy it with the Giants. I might buy it more with the Texans, but
well, I mean, McKinney's now out too, so
exactly, that's a huge deal. But yeah, I don't know, because we know we're starting the running backs. We know we're sitting Mills. The fact that Jones is 82% roster tells me that people are considering starting him. Would you guys start Daniel Jones?
If you were to tell me right now he's going to run, because when he's run, he's been great. So in the 3 games that he has, great for him. In the 3 games where he has 67 or more yards on the ground, he's over 20 fantasy points per game. But he's only done that 3 times. So, it's a matter of why they got away from that of Seattle. I have no idea. I don't know if it was by design or Seattle just kept him in the pocket.
I think Seattle did a great job.
Yes,
right. Schemed against
so if the Texans do something similar and he doesn't get out of the pocket and make plays with his legs, then he's screwed. He's not helping you with his arm. But if he runs, then you'll be very pleased that you start him.
Which of these teams is coming off of a bye?
Well, one's off a bye, one's off a mini bye.
The Giants. Yeah, they're both off long weeks.
And which is the team that has the stud running back that everybody's back in love with now?
Both of them.
They both do.
Well, but come on, the one that's really studly.
They both do.
And which team is number 1 in rushing yards allowed per game?
Yeah, they're both pretty close.
I get it, but where are you going?
No,
with
number
so
1.
I'm
saying the Giants are going to load up and ride Saquon Barkley to a victory, and it's going to make Daniel Jones' numbers look small. I think Saquon has a monster game, and I don't want to trust Daniel Jones very much.
That is part of the reason why the Texans are good against wide receivers and quarterbacks is they
Right.
just get run on
No
all
one
the
throws.
time. Okay, so any wide receivers that you're interested in, and who's your highest ranked receiver in this game?
For me, it's Slayton. Not that interested in him. He's a low end number 3 wide receiver at the best.
I would not be surprised if Cooks has a big game, but I can't trust it. So I would trust Cooks over Slayton.
I would start Brandon Cooks over Khalif Raymond, Allen Robinson, Alec Pierce, Jawan Jennings. Yes. That's how I feel about Brandon Cooks.
You have ranked as a starter. This is a great matchup. That is it for today's show. All right, we'll talk to you on the mailbag. For Dave and Jamie and Zach, I'm Adam. See you later, everybody.